336 BC. Imagine the most successful person you can conceive of. Young, brilliant, outrageously wealthy, and wielding power beyond the wildest dreams of modern billionaires. His name is Alexander. Later, he would be called the Great. He was the Jeff Bezos and Michael Jordan of his time, rolled into one, but with an army capable of conquering the known world. And he did just that. One day, while passing through the city of Corinth, this living god heard about a philosopher, a man so wise and so eccentric that he was the talk of all Greece. Alexander decided to pay his respects in person. He arrived at the marketplace with his brilliant retinue, generals, aristocrats, bodyguards, but he found no school, no villa, not even a humble house. Instead, he found a crazy old man in a ragged cloak, basking in the sun, sprawled in a large clay barrel. This old man was Diogenes. Alexander approached him, his mighty figure casting a shadow over the pauper. Silence fell. The crowd froze. "I am Alexander the Great," the conqueror declared. The old man squinted up at him. "And I am Diogenes, the dog." Alexander was impressed by his audacity. He smiled and uttered a phrase that could change anyone's life on the planet. "Ask of me whatever you wish." Think about that. A blank check. A palace? Gold? A political office? This man could give anything. Diogenes looked at him for a second, and then he replied, "Yes, stand aside. You're blocking my sun." The entire square gasped in horror. Guards gripped their swords. To insult Alexander was a death sentence. But Alexander was not angered. He laughed. He turned to his stunned generals and uttered a phrase that would go down in history. "Truly, if I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." Let's pause here. This is not just a historical anecdote. It's an explosion of meaning. In this one scene lies the entire essence of a radical, uncomfortable, and incredibly relevant philosophy today. The most powerful man in the world, who owned everything, looked at a man who owned nothing, and envied him. What was it about this old man in a barrel that the ruler of the world could envy? What secret did he possess? The secret is simple and terrifying in its simplicity. Diogenes was truly free, and Alexander, with all his armies and treasures, was a slave to his ambitions, a slave to his empire, a slave to his desires. In the next 30 minutes, we will delve into the philosophy of history's most audacious thinker. These won't be boring lectures. We will explore the life of a man who turned his existence into one continuous, shocking performance to prove a single idea. Everything you think you need for happiness, a career, a new iPhone, a big house, social media approval, all of it is not just useless, it is your chains. But to understand Diogenes' rebellion, we need to see the world he rejected. And you will be surprised to find that this world, which existed 2,400 years ago, is ridiculously similar to yours. These weren't just the ruins you see on postcards. This was the Silicon Valley and Wall Street of antiquity, all rolled into one. Forget the serene, sun-drenched ruins you see in tourist brochures. Athens in the 4th century BC was anything but calm. It was New York, Washington, and Silicon Valley, merged into one bustling, noisy, ambitious melting pot. The agora, the central marketplace, was not a place for philosophical strolls. It was Wall Street. The air buzzed with deals, political debates, and most importantly, bragging. Status was the primary currency. Reputation was everything. How you looked, the cloak you wore, who you spoke to, how cleverly you could humiliate an opponent in an argument, that's what mattered. It was a culture of total performance. Every Athenian was a walking personal brand. And this ecosystem had its gurus, its Steve Jobs and Elon Musks. Chief among them was Plato. He founded the Academy, essentially the world's first university. It was an elite, exclusive institution for the privileged youth. There, in the quiet of olive groves, Plato and his students debated high matters, the ideal state, the immortality of the soul, the nature of reality. They sought to comprehend truth through pure reason, far from the dirt and bustle of the marketplace. Aristotle, another titan of thought, catalogued everything in existence, from stars to mollusks. They built grand intellectual systems to explain the world. They were respectable. They had followers, patrons, and comfortable lives. And into this world of polished reputations and abstract theories burst Diogenes, barefoot, dirty, living in a barrel. He looked at all this intellectual elite, these politicians, these businessmen, and saw one thing: hypocrisy. He saw people who spoke of virtue but chased money, spoke of simplicity but lived in luxury, spoke of seeking truth but were actually seeking applause. And Diogenes decided he had had enough. He declared war, not with a sword, but with his way of life. He became a living refutation of all their values. And here's a perfect example of his method. One day, Plato, in his academy, gave a definition that became very popular. In an attempt to define what a human being is, he said, "Man is a biped without feathers." Clever, abstract, elegant. The students applauded. The next day, Diogenes burst into Plato's lecture hall. In his hands was a plucked chicken, frantically flapping its wings. He threw it on the floor before the astonished aristocrats and shouted, "Here, I've brought you Plato's man." A burst of laughter. Utter chaos. In one moment, Diogenes, with the help of one unfortunate chicken, revealed the absurdity and detachment from life of their high-brow philosophy. Plato hastily had to add to his definition, "and with flat nails." But the damage was done. This was Diogenes' signature style. He didn't argue. He showed. He didn't write books about how to live. His life was his book. Every action, every shocking stunt was a chapter in his manifesto. And these performances were far more powerful than any treatise. Diogenes understood what all great marketers and modern performance artists understand. To convey an idea to the masses, words alone are not enough. You need a show. You need shock. And Diogenes was a master of shock content. Imagine the Athenian agora at midday. Crowds of people, noise, trade. And through this crowd walks Diogenes with a lit lamp in his hand, in broad daylight. They stop him and ask, "Diogenes, what are you doing? Why do you have a lamp during the day?" He looks at them seriously and replies, "I am looking for a human being." This was no joke. He wasn't looking for a human in the biological sense. He was looking for at least one honest, authentic, sincere human being. He shone his lamp in the faces of senators, merchants, priests, and found none. With this simple gesture, He accused all of Athenian society of being mere shadows, masks, actors in a play called civilization, but not real people. But that was just the beginning. Diogenes decided to attack the very foundation of society, its rules of decorum. He publicly did everything that was considered intimate. He ate in the marketplace, which was the height of indecency. He urinated on people who insulted him. He masturbated in front of the crowd. When shocked Athenians cried out, "Diogenes, what are you doing?" he calmly replied, "Ah, if only one could satisfy hunger simply by rubbing one's stomach." His actions seem like the antics of a madman. But what if it wasn't madness, but the most rational reaction to a mad world? He wasn't mad, he was a mirror. He held this mirror up to society's face, and it reflected their own ugliness. "You're shocked that I eat in public," he conveyed with his behavior, "but you're not shocked that you wage unjust wars for profit? You're outraged by my nakedness, but not by the lies you're clothed in from head to toe?" He argued that most of our social norms are arbitrary and meaningless. We are ashamed of natural bodily functions, but not of unnatural vices like greed, envy, and hypocrisy. Diogenes simply turned this logic on its head. He lived as if walls didn't exist. Every day was a challenge for him. He consciously trained himself to endure hardship and insults to become invulnerable. He begged from statues, as he said, to accustom myself to refusal. In winter, he hugged cold marble statues to harden his body. All these scandalous antics, all these daily exercises, were merely individual brushstrokes on a canvas. They were illustrations for his masterpiece, for his manifesto, sculpted from clay, for his home. The main symbol of Diogenes' rebellion was his barrel, more precisely, a pithos, a large clay vessel in which Greeks stored grain or wine. For Athenians, it was a sign of absolute degradation. To live in a barrel meant to be at the very bottom. But for Diogenes, it wasn't a basement, it was a throne. His barrel was his fortress of freedom. To understand its power, you need to look at what it replaced. The American dream is largely built around a house. A big house with a white picket fence, a two-car garage, a lawn. This is a symbol of success. But Diogenes saw this not as a dream, but as a trap. Think about it. Your house owns you through a mortgage, a word derived from Old French for dead pledge. Your car owns you through loans and insurance. Your new phone owns you through the fear of breaking or losing it. Every item you acquire demands your time, your money, and your attention. It becomes another bar in the cage you build for yourself. There's a legendary story that illustrates how Diogenes came to this conclusion. At first, he did have some possessions, and one of his last remaining items was a simple wooden cup for drinking. One day, he was sitting by a fountain and saw a small boy, a pauper, drinking water directly from his cupped hands. And at that moment, it dawned on Diogenes. He looked at the boy, then at his cup, and he realized that even this simple item was superfluous. It complicated his life. He immediately smashed his cup against the stones and said, "Fool that I was, carrying around this extra burden all this time." That was his last vestige of dependence. The average American home contains about 300,000 items. Think about your garage, your closets, those boxes you haven't opened in years. We live in an age of material plague. Diogenes understood what we are only beginning to realize. The more things you have, the more ways they have to break. And to break you. Every time you desire something, a new gadget, fashionable clothes, a better car, you voluntarily place a new yoke upon yourself. You have to work harder to buy it. You have to worry about keeping it. You have to suffer when you lose it. Diogenes simply opted out of this game. His barrel gave him absolute freedom. He didn't have to pay rent. He didn't have to worry about thieves. He had nothing to steal. He could move simply by rolling his barrel to another location. While Athenians were chained to their possessions, he was free as the wind. He owned only what no one could take from him: his mind, his body, and the sunlight. He freed himself from the most obvious form of slavery, the slavery of things. But there remained another, far more insidious prison, the one in which most of us are trapped for life. He freed himself from possessions. But how did he free himself from the most significant prison, the opinions of other people? When Athenians saw Diogenes sleeping in his barrel, ignoring all rules of decorum, they didn't know what to call him. So they invented an insult. They called him Kion, dog. It was the worst thing one could say about a person in polite society. Dirty, shameless, living like an animal. Any other person would have been humiliated. Any other person would have tried to defend their honor. But Diogenes did what no one expected. He smiled and said, "Yes, I am a dog." He didn't just accept the nickname, he made it his honorary title. His followers became known as cynics, dog philosophers. Why? Because Diogenes saw in the dog not an insult, but an ideal. Look at a dog. It lives completely in the present moment. It doesn't suffer from past mistakes and doesn't worry about the future. When the sun shines, it enjoys the sun. When it's given food, it enjoys the food. We, on the other hand, spend half our lives regretting what was, and the other half worrying about what might happen. A dog knows no false shame. It does what is natural to its nature, and it absolutely doesn't care who is watching. It is honest in its expressions. It wags its tail at those it likes and barks at those who threaten it. It doesn't know how to flatter and doesn't plot. By taking the name dog, Diogenes was telling the Athenians, "You call me an animal to insult me, but I accept it as a compliment. Because I, unlike you, live in harmony with nature, not with your artificial, hypocritical rules." Now let's translate this idea into our world. We live in an era of total surveillance that we have imposed on ourselves. It's called social media. Every step we take, every thought, every photo is put on public display and judgment. We are obsessed with likes, comments, follower counts. We live in constant fear of saying the wrong thing, being misunderstood, being canceled. We spend years building our so-called personal brand. We carefully choose our words, filter our photos, creating an ideal, market-attractive version of ourselves. Diogenes spent his life tearing down his personal brand to its foundations. He understood that reputation is the most expensive and most useless thing one can own. Reputation is what other people think of you. It doesn't belong to you. It lives in their heads, and you become its slave. You constantly have to maintain it, protect it, polish it. You're afraid to take risks, afraid to be honest, afraid to be yourself, because it might damage your image. Diogenes showed that true freedom is when you absolutely don't care what others think of you, when their praise doesn't make you happier, and their insults cannot wound you. This is psychological invulnerability. This is what Alexander the Great envied. He could conquer cities, but he could not conquer the opinion of every person. He was a slave to his fame. Diogenes, called a dog, was freer than any king. Okay, the idea is clear. Free yourself from possessions. Free yourself from the opinions of others. But let's be honest. Few of us are willing to live in a barrel and behave like a dog in modern society. So how can we apply these radical lessons in our comfortable 21st century lives without becoming social outcasts? Diogenes is not a step-by-step instruction manual. He is a direction. He is the North Star pointing towards absolute freedom. You don't need to sail all the way to the star to adjust your course. The idea is not to copy his life, but to use his principles as a lever to hack your own matrix. Here are 3 practical tools, adapted from Diogenes' arsenal for the 21st century. The first tool, the practice of voluntary discomfort. Diogenes hugged cold statues in winter to harden himself. This seems crazy, but he was training his muscle of resilience. We live in a culture of total comfort, and this makes us weak. We are afraid to lose this comfort, and this fear is the leash on which we are held. Start training yourself. Take a cold shower. Spend a weekend without your phone. Try eating only the simplest food, like rice and lentils, 1 day a month. Sleep on the floor for 1 night. The goal is not to suffer. The goal is to prove to your brain that you can endure much more than you think. When you stop fearing discomfort, you stop being a slave to comfort. The second tool, the audit of possessions. Diogenes broke his cup when he realized he didn't need it. We, on the other hand, are drowning in things. Conduct a simple experiment. Take a box and put everything you haven't used in the last 6 months into it. Seal it and put it in the garage. If after 3 months you don't even remember what's in there, you don't need it. This isn't about minimalism as an aesthetic. It's about freeing up mental space. Every item is a small mental tab open in your browser. It requires maintenance, space, attention. By closing these tabs, you free up your brain's RAM for truly important things. And the third, most important tool, the audit of opinions. Diogenes embraced the nickname dog to disarm his critics. We, however, desperately seek approval. Start with an information diet. Unfollow everyone on social media who makes you feel worse. Stop reading comments. Practice saying no without excuses. Your attention is the most valuable currency you have. Corporations spend billions to capture it. Don't give it away for free. Choose whose opinion truly matters to you. The opinion of 2 to 3 close people, not an anonymous internet crowd. Diogenes wasn't asking us to be poor. He was asking us to be rich. But not with money, but with things that cannot be bought. Time, independence, and a complete absence of fear. Our entire economic system is built on convincing you to exchange your finite, irreplaceable time for things you don't need, to impress people you don't like. Diogenes simply said, "No thank you, I'll keep my time." He was the richest man in Athens because he owned 100% of his days. And what are all the treasures of the world worth if you don't have a single free moment to just sit in the sun? He took this philosophy to its logical conclusion, even when it came to his own death. And this, perhaps, was his last and greatest performance. Diogenes was almost 90 years old. He had lived a long, full, absolutely uncompromising life. When he felt his end was near, his students gathered around him. They wanted to bury their teacher with honor, to erect a monument to him. But Diogenes had other plans. This was his last chance to stage a performance, his final act of defiance. He gave his friends a simple instruction. When he died, he ordered them not to bury him. He told them to simply throw his body outside the city wall, to be eaten by wild dogs. His students were horrified. For a Greek, a proper burial was a sacred duty. To be unburied meant eternal damnation for the soul. They asked, "Do you want your body to be pecked by ravens and torn by dogs?" And here came Diogenes' last laugh. He replied, "Not at all. Place a stick next to me so I can ward them off." "But how will you be able to do that?" they asked, "since you won't feel anything." "And if I won't feel anything," the old man replied, "then what the hell do I care who gnaws at my body?" In this answer lies his entire philosophy. Complete, total, absolute indifference to meaningless human conventions. Even in death, he refused to play by the rules. He showed that our fears about what will happen to our bodies, what will be said about us after death, are the last and most absurd kind of slavery. He was free even from the instinct of self-preservation of his posthumous reputation. Diogenes is not an answer. Diogenes is a question. He is a lit lamp in broad daylight, whose light he directs at each of us 2.5 millennia later. He looks at your big house, your prestigious job, your perfect Instagram profile, and quietly asks, "Are you sure you own all of this, and it doesn't own you?" He is a constant reminder that you can have all the treasures in the world and be a slave, and you can have nothing but the sun overhead and be the freest person on earth. At the beginning, we told the story of Diogenes and Alexander, the ruler of the world who cast a shadow, and the pauper who asked for only one thing: sunlight. This story is not just an anecdote. It is a metaphor for your life. Every day, your own Alexander rises above you. It could be your mortgage. It could be your student debt. It could be the fear of being fired. It could be the desperate need for approval and likes. These are all the things that make you do what you don't want to do and live how you don't want to live. Diogenes' philosophy is not a call to live in a barrel. It is a call to ask yourself one simple but most important question in life. What in your life is the thing that is blocking your sun?